There are a lot of real estate professionals out there that preach that owning a home is the best possible decision you can make and that it is 100% better than renting. I have personally seen buying a house be one of the biggest financial mistakes that people make. And so you do not fall into the same trap. Today, I am going to share with you the 7 reasons you may not be ready to buy a house in 2022. The first sign that you might not be ready to buy a home is that you have a low credit score. Now, it is possible to get pre-qualified for a home loan with a low credit score. In fact, I have seen some lenders pre-qualify buyers who have credit scores in the 500s. Now, that does not necessarily mean that it is the best financial decision for that buyer to be buying a house. Right now, most lenders are going to want to see at least 620 to 640 credit scores across all 3 credit bureaus. Now, of course, the higher credit score you have, the better interest rate you're going to get. So you're going to get more favorable loan terms, which is only going to help you out in the long run. So if you're kind of borderline on credit or you are on the lower end, it might be worth it for you to work on boosting that credit score up a little bit before trying to buy a house. The second sign that you may not be ready to buy a house right now is that 30% or more of your income would be going towards making your house payment. So your house payment is going to cover the principal, paying down the total balance of the house, the interest for that interest rate, your taxes on the house, and cover your home insurance. But you don't want that one payment to cover all 4 of those to take up 30% of your take-home income. The reason being is that you're going to be a homeowner now. You will no longer have like a landlord to call if something goes wrong. On top of maintenance and utilities, you also will have like regular upkeep items. Like, are you going to buy a lawnmower or are you going to pay someone to do your lawn? All of these things are good to keep in mind because you ideally want to keep all of those home expenses under 30% of your income just to be safe so that you're not overextending yourself. Sign number 3 that you might not be quite ready to buy a house is that you do not have an emergency fund. This kind of follows what we just talked about. If you don't have an emergency fund, you could find yourself being really, really strapped if something goes wrong with the house. Everyone always wants to think of the best possible solution. Like, I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to decorate it. It's going to be super cute and I'm going to have my friends over or host family Thanksgiving. And it is exciting to dream about those things and plan for them. But it's also important to plan for things going wrong because a house is a structure. It's going to endure normal wear and tear. And you're not going to move out after a year and your landlord's not going to come in and do a clean and repaint. You are going to be responsible for the maintenance when things go wrong, as well as the regular upkeep. And that's where that emergency fund can come into play. Sign number 4 is you are struggling to come up with down payment and closing costs. Now, there are ways as a home buyer that you can buy a house potentially with no down payment or covering your closing costs. However, 2022 has been an unprecedented real estate market and we're only 2 months in. It has become increasingly difficult for home buyers to buy homes using down payment assistance or getting closing costs covered. Although you may be able to qualify for those programs, with the competition in the market, it's very hard to get them accepted. So if you are wanting to buy a house, it might be worth it for you to wait and work on getting those items saved up for rather than trying to rush into it right now. Sign number 5 that you may not be quite ready to buy a house is if you have a lot of upcoming large expenses. If I haven't made it exceptionally clear already, buying a house, maintaining a house, in general, just owning a house takes a lot of money. It does. I'm not going to lie to you. If you know that in the next few years you have lots of large financial obligations, it may not be the best time for you to buy a house. Let's say that you're getting married and you have a large wedding that you're planning for. You're obviously going to rake up some expenses planning for that. So you may want to focus on that and put buying a house on another to-do list. The same thing would be true if you had a lot of upcoming travel planned. It may be better for you to just focus on the stability of renting and not having to worry really about any additional expenses beyond covering your rent and utilities, rather than buying a house in the same time frame as approaching other large expenses. So you should always be thinking like, does this fit with what I already have planned for the next few years? The sixth sign that I want to talk about is a really important one. You might not want to buy a house in 2022 if you think you are going to be moving within the next 5 years. Methodology behind this is that when you buy a house, you do incur some expenses like your own closing costs to get the loan and to get clear title on the house. Now, you will want to build up some equity in the house so that when you sell it, after your loan is paid off, you get some cash back in your pocket. Ideally, you get your down payment that you put on it back, as well as the amount in all those payments that you've made and some appreciation on the asset as it has gone up in value. When you turn around and sell a house, there are going to be costs that you incur as well. You are going to have to pay closing costs on the seller side and potentially realtor fees. It does take time for you to build up enough equity to cover those costs to sell the house, as well as give you a substantial amount of money back in your pocket so that you can use it for your next house or future investments. So it is a really good idea to mentally prepare yourself and say, okay, am I going to be where I want to buy for the next 5 years? And if the answer is yes, it's probably a good time to buy. The seventh and final sign that you might not be ready to buy a house this year is if you are in a lot of debt. If you've watched a few of my other videos, you may have heard me talk about your debt to income ratio. And that is something that lenders look at to figure out how much you can afford when it comes to your total income versus all of your expenses and the debt that you take on. If you have a lot of debt, so we're talking like car loans, student loans, credit cards, any debts that you currently have, if that is a high percentage of your income already, and you don't have a ton of free income that could go towards a house payment, it may not be the best time to buy a house. And I deep dive into debt to income ratio and show you how to calculate yours and everything, break it down in this video that I've already made. So I will link that up here. And I highly suggest that you check that out and figure out, where are you in your debt to income ratio, and would it be a safe year for you to buy a house? Buying a home can be a really rewarding financial decision as long as it is planned for and well calculated. I hope that today this video helped you with figuring out if this year would be a good year for you to buy a house. I would really appreciate it if you shared it on social media with anyone you know who might be entertaining the idea of buying a house rather than renting when their lease is up. I'm Nicole Nark, Arkansas real estate broker, with videos to help you find your way home, and I will see you in the next one.